Today's show is sponsored by Vasion Print. The problem with print is it's a resource suck. IT teams are spending too much time on troubleshooting and upkeep. The biggest offender? Print servers. So get rid of them. Swap your outdated, resource-intensive infrastructure for Vasion Print, formerly known as Printer Logic, and get serverless, direct IP, secure printing for any device, anywhere. Centralized print management reduces overhead and workload and increases productivity, which is great for your IT team and your bottom line. Increase security, remove scripts and GPOs, and enable self-service user deployments. Secure, seamless, and scalable. That's what you get when you eliminate print servers. See how at vasion.com.
Cloudcast Media presents from the massive studios in Raleigh, North Carolina. This is the Cloudcast with Aaron Delp and Brian Gracely, bringing you the best of cloud computing from around the world.
Good morning, good evening, wherever you are, and welcome back to the Cloudcast. We are coming to you live from the massive Cloudcast studios here in Raleigh, North Carolina, midway through July 2025. Hope everybody's doing well. We are going to do something a little bit different today. Brandon Whichard joins us from Software Defined Talk, and we're going to get to that right after the break. But we're going to dive a little bit into kind of a different format for one of the Wednesday shows. And we're not doing Cloud News of the Month. Brandon and I often do Cloud News of the Month along with Aaron and so forth. But we're going to try something a little bit different. A few of us have been trying some different formats. I know we did one a couple of weeks ago. But we want to try and dig into one specific topic and dive into it in a little bit of depth, dive into it from the technology angle, the economics angle, the strategy angle, and kind of play around with the format for it. So we're going to dig into kind of looking at some of these AI coding assistants and some of the drama that's been happening around that lately, what that means to the marketplace, what that means in terms of future acquisitions in the AI space overall. But we're going to dive into all that right after the break.
Today's show is sponsored by Doit. Cloud spend is just the surface. What really matters is how it drives performance, reliability, and speed to market. Doit Cloud Intelligence aligns every dollar to the intent of the workloads. Doit is trusted by companies like Fiverr, HackerRank, Current, and Superbet. Doit helps teams go beyond dashboards, surfacing hidden inefficiencies, resolving incidents faster, and aligning cloud operations with business priorities. One platform, unified signals, better outcomes across engineering and finance. Visit doit.com, that's DOIT.com, to unlock intent-aware FinOps at scale. Doit Cloud Intelligence. Today's show is sponsored by Factor. Is your help desk still asking security questions like, what's your mother's maiden name to verify callers? If your organization uses Okta, Factor Identity Portal transforms caller verification, allowing you to authenticate users instantly using their Okta-enrolled MFA factors like SMS and Okta Verify. Reduce call times by 60%, eliminate social engineering risks, and streamline help desk operations with one unified dashboard. Check out Factor's Taco AI, the first AI agent for Okta, on their website. Visit factor.io, that's FCTR.io, and you could try it free for 60 days. Time to retire those security questions and switch to 2025 standards. And we're back and joined anytime we need to talk about developer assistance and AI. Brandon Whichard, man, how are you doing? I'm a little worried for you. There's a lot going on in this market. I think there's a lot to sort through. How you been?
Listen, I'm doing fantastic. And I've been thinking all weekend about what the employees of Windsurf must be thinking, because I have just been captivated by this whole thing. And to quickly recap, Windsurf was going to be acquired by OpenAI for $3 billion. Deal falls apart in the middle of, late last week. So now, of course, then you're like, well, okay, we'll just continue on. We'll keep doing it. No. In steps Google. They don't acquire the company. They hire the key executives as well as, I guess, the quote unquote, like AI brains behind, all the talent. And they, if you will, give them $2.4 billion. And somehow they get like this thing where they just get a non-exclusive license to Windsurf. So this was one of these, like, it's an acquisition, but not an acquisition. So they leave what looks to be like, as we were preparing for this, like, I don't know, somewhere between 200 and 400 people are working at Windsurf for the moment, with a new CEO who was previously the head of biz dev, with, I guess, all the technical talent gone. So I just think to myself, like, think of the emotional roller coaster of these people, right? They were, think about how hard it is to go out and, like, I want to find a good job. Like, where should I bet my career? We talk about this stuff all the time. And they bet on it. They get into Windsurf, which at the beginning is probably like, what is this thing? Is it even going to work? Not only does it work, it's like the home run. You're like, I did it. I joined the company. They're the ones that are going to be worth billions of dollars. Then I'm going to be acquired by OpenAI, who's going to be worth like even more. How could you not be like shopping for a vacation home, putting your kids through great colleges, planning your retirement? You're like, you have done it. You have won. Only to have in a matter of 3 days over a weekend to be like, not only are we not being acquired, all the smart people that are quote unquote the talent that are worth all the big money have left. And now I'm stuck at a shell of its former self, a company that could be potentially worth like nothing. I mean, certainly not as much as it was funded. So that to me just encapsulates this entire AI revolution. It's just like from $3 billion acquisitions to kind of working in a zombie company overnight. So I don't even know what to tell these people. I mean, I just think maybe take some PTO. I don't know. I really don't know how you would deal with this. I don't know what the all hands meeting is like. I mean, I've seen a lot of difficult all hands meetings, but if you're leading this all hands meeting, like, hey, we all need to stick together, missionaries over mercenaries. I'm like, I think everybody that was a mercenary left and they took all the money and all the IP with us. Like, what are we going to do? So that is a prelude, Brian. What do you think? What are you thinking if you're a Windsurf employee, over the weekend?
So I kind of watched it unfold because we saw some things. I don't know, it was Thursday night or Friday night. We're recording this on a Sunday. We'll publish it on a Wednesday, but it was like last week. So, we'll call it like July 8th or 9th or something like that. And it was like, yep, the deal's going to, everyone's kind of expecting the deal to go through because OpenAI's got, seems like unlimited money. And then you start to see this stuff. It's like, yeah, maybe there's some concerns with Microsoft and the contract negotiations. Again, Windsurf's got to be sitting there like, hey, I don't really care that much about Microsoft and OpenAI's relationship. Like, we love OpenAI. Like, this is our new kind of corporate thing. It falls apart, but it doesn't. I think the most interesting piece about this, and this is, you and I talked about this, and Aaron and I talked about this, I feel like maybe a year or so ago, that everything was like acqui-hires, right? Because the companies that are the biggest in AI are also the ones that are sort of in the spotlight of, the U.S. Department of Justice and the FTC and concerns about like acquisitions and monopolies and all this stuff. And I feel like if you're somebody who works at any of these companies, so again, we always feel bad for Windsurf because it feels like those folks who aren't part of the AI team are kind of getting the shaft, whether they're in sales or marketing or customer support or whatever. But I do feel like there are no acquisitions in AI. There are just acqui-hires for two reasons. One, the people are like, I don't need the other parts of the team. They're not of any value to me whatsoever because I'm, whatever. But it also is their way of getting around any of these DOJ scrutinies. And so I kind of feel like this is just the most visible of the acqui-hires because they had grown to 250 people, whereas all the other ones were like 15 people or 20 people that used to be part of the Google Brain team or the, whatever it was. But I think this is unfortunately a very sad, beware of joining one of these companies, not because they couldn't be something, but I don't think any of the non-AI people are going to actually ever get acquired because why wouldn't you just say, look, let's just do an acqui-hire? Like, I don't, it feels like they've all figured out, the big AI companies have all figured out how to not only get around AI scrutiny, but they've sort of figured out like the only people that matter in this, as far as they're concerned, are the AI scientists and the VCs that they want to keep happy so they can keep, getting new rounds of funding. The rest of it, they don't really care about. And since they weren't really going to keep their sales and marketing anyways, why bother paying for them or something like that? It's cutthroat as hell. I feel terrible for those folks, but I think that it feels like the new reality.
Well, I think you're exactly right. I think it's never been more cutthroat, right? Because I don't know. I just think of like, I think of this game, or if we want to call it this market, is really like consisting of two levels. You have executives, venture capitalists, investors, and founders. They're playing in a whole different world. It's like, in the world of like salary caps, because we keep using sports metaphor, it's like there's like an unlimited salary cap for those people. But then everybody else that's sort of just working like rank and file, like you're like a minimum, whatever you want to call it, like league minimum employee. You're viewed as replaceable as possible. And so I just think it's going to be one of these things that, I think it's always been difficult in, certainly my career, and I think others, to like, you'll be with a bunch of executive teams and they'll be talking about culture and they'll be talking about building things together. And it's like, there has never been a time that it is more clear and it has to be more clear to you that like, if you do not know for sure like you're on the inside, you need to know you are expendable. You are extremely expendable. And I think, the other thing that's going on here, which is so weird, because I guess evidently the reason it kind of fell apart, at least in part, was because if OpenAI had acquired them, that becomes part of their intellectual property. And then Microsoft, of course, has access to all of OpenAI's intellectual property. And it sounded like OpenAI didn't want that to happen. I guess they wanted to keep that for themselves. And so that is yet another confusing thing. Because, of course, every time Sam Altman's interviewed, he's like, no, everything is great.
Right.
Couldn't be happier. We just had lunch. You're not going to believe the great meeting we just had. And then meanwhile, it's like these poor people in this $3 billion or in that case, $3 billion acquisition completely shuttled over, I don't know, some tension or at least contract terms. So it's just insanity to me. So I think, everything is faster now. I think, and things just get faster and faster. And so I feel like Windsurf has sped run the entire cycle from startup to super fast product market fit growing startup to we're getting acquired to we're a zombie company. And then, I guess if we follow that line, that you'll be acquired for, a brand, right? Potentially down the road. And that's it. Right. I mean, it's incredible. It's an incredible thing to watch unfold.
Yeah, no. And the interesting thing is this was not at all when you and I talked a day or so ago, what we were going to talk about like this. But I do feel like this is the perfect lead in to what we did want to talk about, which is the thing that happened this past week with Cursor. So your favorite company, Cursor, decided, I don't know, sometime last week to make a change to their pricing structure. So they had sort of already previously been, free tier and the pro tier, the $20 tier that lots of people were very used to. And they decided to do two things. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think this is what they did. They introduced a third tier, a sort of a super tier. They called the ultra tier. You get 20x more capabilities or capacity than the pro tier for $200. So you get 20x more at 10x the price. And, that would have been perfectly fine. But then they made a change. So walk me through what sort of change they made and why this freaked everybody out.
Well, I don't know if I got all the details here, but I'll do my best. So essentially they just went from $20 unlimited to what essentially the sleight of hand here is that you could still have quote unquote unlimited, but for a certain set of models, right? But for all those using Cursor, it's sort of, I like to think of it as just a magic, right? You're just talking to the thing and in the thing, it has a place where it just says auto and the auto is just you figure out which model to do. I don't know, because you can go in there and you can pick between them, right? But it's I don't know. The magic is I don't know anything. You just vibe coding, vibe modeling, just give me the best answer. That's all I want. I don't want, and when you start doing it, and I think at least for a while, everyone was on the $20, if you will, unlimited tier, it would just sort of if you used up all your quote unquote good queries to the best models, it would just default you back, right? Which became apparent when you were using it. You'd be oh, suddenly this thing went from PhD level intelligence to oh, you're more like a high schooler. What happened there? And then you look, you're I'm out of I've used all my good queries. So what they did was, and as they referenced, and just a real long story short, it's I would just say it very simply. It's hey, turns out it costs a lot of money for everyone to be using this. And, essentially all the tokens on the back end. And that's where they basically changed it and said, okay, well, if you're using these other models and you keep using the quote unquote good models, we're going to charge you more. Right. But it's not going to be obvious to you that what's going on. So then suddenly everybody starts to get these bills. And of course, rightfully so, everybody's pissed. And to Cursor's credit, they wrote a pretty good mea culpa blog post. They said, bad on us. We didn't make it clear. And they explained what it was. And they also said anybody that had experienced, some type of overage unintentionally was eligible to some refund. I take them at their word that they'll do that. I think they're so successful, or at least at this point, they can walk it back and be happy. But it will be interesting to see. I think, where we're kind of getting to now is okay, Cursor does have this really great UI. Love it, right? But they are beholden to these model providers who they have to pay, right?
Right.
And at some point, spending $1 or charging $1, but costing you $2, it doesn't work, right? There's a math. The math does not work. So at some point they have to figure it out. Then on top of that, because everything's constantly changing, it's I've been a huge Cursor fan, but now I'm kind of almost become team Claude Code, right? So I'm even switching teams, right? So it's I don't even know. Are they even the best thing anymore, right? Because it's moving so fast. So it's we saw Windsurf already collapse. Cursor, great. But things are changing even within this coding world. A lot of people are moving off that model. And then it's suddenly it's well, if you're Cursor, like, are you worth $9 billion or are you potentially going to go bankrupt? You know, it's like, I don't know. I mean, like both things are logical to me.
Yeah, no, I think this, what seems like a little thing, sort of the nuance of we made a price change and which model you could use. I think it highlights every discussion we've had, every concern we've had about this whole space, which, for the most part, feels like the most widely used sort of common AI thing, other than people just using ChatGPT to ask, really basic questions and stuff. So like if I kind of walk through my list, it's like number one, is there sort of commoditization of models? Are there really any differentiation of models? Okay, well, this sort of seems to prove that yes, there are distinctly some models are better than other models, and most likely that'll probably stay that way. Now, will the gap change over time? Sure. But there is still distinctly moats and differences between the models. Number two, does Cursor have any sort of moat? Yeah, to a certain extent, right? Like you and I have talked about this. Ben Thompson did a really good interview with them. They are trying to build the AI native of models. But then the question becomes, you can be as AI native as you want to be, but do you have to own the entire sort of stack as AI native, or are you limited by like where your stopping points are? And it feels a little bit like that. You know better than I do because you're using the tool all the time. And then the third piece of it is like, the move from $20 to $200. I mean, like the 20 thing plus ultra or plus auto now sort of feels like people have to pay attention to the cost, whereas before it didn't feel like they necessarily did. And it feels like it almost goes from like, okay, if somebody told me it was $240 for the year, $20 bucks a month versus $200 a year. Now you go from sort of the thought process of like, okay, it's a cup of coffee, I'm not really going to worry about it, to, well, that might be like a vacation for the year for like $2,500 or something like that. Or, am I going to be able to like write this off my taxes? Or am I going to be able to get my boss to endorse this? Whereas $20, you didn't really think about it. So it does feel like they haven't broken people's sort of love of Cursor if you loved it, but it does feel like it highlights all these things that, we throw on top of it. Wait a second, look at the market. Are you really worth $9 billion? Like who is going to pay for you at $9 billion when somebody wasn't really even willing to pay for you at, given all the weird machinations going on in the marketplace, couldn't even pay for somebody at $2.5 billion, right? Like
right.
So, okay, so let's start with some basic stuff. How is this actually communicated to people?
Well,
right? Like,
I mean,
as far as I can tell,
maybe the answer is not well.
As far as I can tell, there was originally a blog that looked like it was about 2 paragraphs long. Like it looked like sort of just a random ass email. Like, was this highlighted in the tool? Did anything?
Not that I ever saw. I think this is like, that's the biggest miss. It's like, okay, if you're gonna, change people, because that's the one thing. It's like all these tools make you take the credit card, right? And it's usually like, okay, it's fine. Like the worst I'm out is $20, right? And there isn't. Right. As far as I haven't seen it, right? Like in Cursor and like all these tools, you want somebody to be like, whoa, max me out or like, notify me, like don't just stop, right? Say I can't do anything. Yeah. And that's the biggest thing. It's like, I think, because if you're just in the tool, just coding away and it doesn't like pop up and it doesn't tell you like, because ChatGPT does this a lot, right? If you're using just a free plan, it's like, oh, you're timed out for till tomorrow. You can't ask any good questions till tomorrow. Fall back to the less complex model. So yeah, I mean, whatever, huge miss, huge product miss. After a company that spent so much time trying to get so many of the details right, I mean, all I can say, massive.
Yeah. Is the other thing that's crazy is it feels like it's amazing how fast some of these companies go from, it feels like they have their act together. It feels like they've sort of got to figure certain things out. I mean, like people, you could have walked away from that Ben Thompson interview and been like, yeah, these guys, I mean, they're all in on doing it differently. They're going to have, they're not dependent on these other models. And now all of a sudden you're like, oh no, wait a second, they are. You're right. Like like people very quickly are like, yeah, I like the thing does, but I think they only seem to like it or love it when they were using on the back end the best engine possible. It was like, yeah, I got a Ferrari, but I'm using like a Toyota low end engine. That part stinks. I don't love that part.
Right. Well, it's like once you had the greatness, you don't want to go back. And I think we should pause here. It's like the other thing that Cursor finds itself in a battle with is like, I'm going to call it like agent-based command line tools, Cloud Code, as well as the new Gemini one, are very cool. If you've not played with them, everyone has homework. Go use them. It takes a little bit of time to get used to it. Like the first time I did, I was like, it's kind of like, what do you mean the command line? What am I doing? But then you start using it and you're like, this may be the better way. right? Because this sort of like has like, if you will, much more access to like all your files. You can see everything. It's sort of like it looks over more and it can kind of just natively do a bunch of stuff on your command line. You're like, this is even more magic, right? And then Cursor has spent all of this time to be like, call it, we're going to have an AI powered IDE. Which is good, which is also good. If you're like in there with a scalpel, you're like, I'm working on a file. I know exactly where I want to make some changes. I'm like heavy in the logic. It's great. Cursor can see everything and it's beautiful. It works in your containers and it's like great. But like, it's really unclear to me now. It's like, well, I guess it's clear to me that these things need to come together. And in fact, Cursor has hired, not surprisingly, the product manager and one of the key leaders from Claude Code has now joined them. They're in like some executive position. So it's like the mission is to like, how are you going to bring these together? Right. Cause I don't want both. I really just want like, it's like you want either one. You're like, sometimes I want to be on the command line sometimes. And so I think Cursor's in a fight for like the paradigm too, right? The whole paradigm is like, because there's like, I think there's like a definitely quickly, it's sort of like, maybe we should just be on the command line for this, right? Or what I think, as we already went over, Google buying Windsurf is like, you know what we just announced here at Google 2 weeks ago? We announced this great command line tool. You know what we don't have? We don't have a great IDE experience. Windsurf.
Right.
Windsurf people. Go over here and just rewrite everything you did and make it work on the Gemini CLI. And that's going to be, I expect that to be out within 2 months, if not faster. And that's going to be really compelling. So here you have Cursor. You're like, back to our question. I'm worth 9 billion or maybe I'm worth nothing. Right. And it's like, I've got all fronts are attacking me. Like the model people are charging me. Other people are building better models. Other people are acquiring my competition. But yet here I sit with a really powerful user base. So I think to me, it's like, if I'm biz dev at Cursor, I'm taking every phone call. I'm like, who wants to talk? Right. Like, cause we are open for sale. Like if you call me with the right number, we're going to do a deal today. Like almost like buying a car. I am available on Sunday. Call me on Sunday. Come to my office. We will do a deal. To me, that's what I think has to happen. What are you thinking?
Yeah. I mean, I think there's so many things going on here. I mean, I think this was inevitable, right? Because they've got A, huge costs and B, funding rounds, even though, the GPUs they don't own, they're running on the back end, but they're still assets. So, this is the part where it's like, okay, this was inevitable. They're going to have to go through figuring out if people really love them. I think the bigger thing this sort of does is it makes me ask two questions. Number one, we've gone from literally like get a copilot, sort of the IDE sort of related thing, to somebody clones the IDE related thing to become Cursor that looks a little more AI native. And then you've got this CLI thing going on. And all this has happened like literally within the last year-ish, with, the bigger changes happening within the last 6 to 12 months. It feels like there's still, no, I don't know. I want to say like no common pattern, which if you go, oh, what's a market that has no common patterns and no, consistency with, it's like developer tools, because they don't like, historically, it's always been like that. So you're like, okay, maybe this is what's just going to keep happening. But then the reality of that is you go, okay, none of that jives with the idea that like people are using this a lot, but yet they've never historically paid for anything. There's really no companies that are extremely well known for just building developer tools. It's always sort of like developer tools are a front end for something else, right? Whether it was like Windows Server or it was, AWS, EC2 and compute and storage and so forth. Like I'm sort of like, I keep coming back to sort of these two things. Number one, which is like, it still doesn't jive. There's these massive valuations for markets that historically have never paid for anything. So it's like, what are you attaching it to? And if you're attaching to Azure, cool. If you're attaching to GCP, cool. If you're attaching it to AWS, cool. Like I could see one of those folks stepping up and going, this needs to be my next kind of flywheel for you using my compute and stuff. And then the second part of it is I'm sort of like, been given all that, is there any way as a standalone company to survive, or do you just have to be part of a bundle? And in fact, it won't surprise me 6 months from now if like Google is like, if you want to develop AI tools with Google, you have like the Google AI Hub, and you have Google CLI, and you have Google Cursor, and AWS is like, yeah, we've got the Claude way of doing it, and we've got this agent way of, I feel like they're all going to come, every one of them is going to have sort of this bundled suite of things, because they're like, I don't know what developers want, but I do know that if I can get you tied to it, and they're going to try and, I think they're going to start doing a thing where they're like, I need to tie you to my cloud, as opposed to, kind of being like, oh, don't worry about what's behind the scenes. because they're like, I gotta, shit, I just paid $9 billion for you or $4 billion for you or whatever I paid for you. I gotta monetize that somehow. And I need you to be sticky to what I do because that's a known business model, right? Like it used to work. And I don't know.
So, but I think, okay, so we're sitting here, right? I think we're in the meeting, the strategy meeting. They call us in to prepare the decks. I think there's 2 decks we can show. We can be like, listen, okay, if we're going alone in Cursor, we got to go up the stack. Okay. We got to try to own everything. We got to try to replace GitHub. We got to replace the entire development and deployment pipelines, right? We want to do it all, right? Because we're going to do it in an AI native way. And we're going to be the company that revolutionizes how development is done, right? Kind of like, if you will, Kubernetes. So you got to make the pitch of we're doing it all. And the reason we're going to win is we're going to do this in an AI native way. All these other tools like GitHub Copilot, honestly, love the people at Microsoft, but never use it, never talk about it. Feels like it is left. It is severely behind at this point, right? And I think we talked about that before a little bit on the add-ons versus native, right? So I think you got that's deck 1. And you're we got to hire a lot of people. We need to hire some enterprise salespeople. We could be worth a ton of money, right? But this is going to be a long slog. Or door number 2 is we need to sell this company while the brand is hot. And I think the pitch you would make, so we'll go through the list real quick because you got it right here. It's Microsoft is an obvious place, right, to go to. So we're you guys, we built this on VS Code. Let's all be honest for a moment. We did it better than you did it. Okay. Copilot was a good effort, but didn't get there. And if you're Microsoft, it's let's just say it's $10 billion, right? It's are you willing to be for $10 billion, I take them off the table. I own the brand. I'm going to get all these people. I'm going to basically have them build it under a Microsoft brand. And I'm going to do my best to keep them doing what they've been doing and make sure it's the premier development experience. So for $10 billion, I don't know what Microsoft's worth right now. 2 trillion, something like that. 3 trillion. 3 trillion. So it's that's just it's just an insurance policy, right? It's just we can't let this happen, right? So I don't know if you're Nadella, Brian, I made that pitch to you. I'm 10 billion. It's nothing. It's absolutely nothing, right? We just can't let this thing, even if it fails, it was worth. It's insurance we never use. I don't know. What do you do? Are you willing to make that acquisition at that price?
Well, I think there's a couple aspects of Microsoft that are interesting. Number 1 is they don't really own their own model, right? They have access to the OpenAI model, right? They have this sort of
exclusive access to, right, for an extended period of time. Yes, I believe so.
Exclusive access except for OpenAI.
For a couple weeks. True. Point taken. Right. Yes.
So I think that is the most important negotiating piece they have, because let's say OpenAI thing goes away. Let's say tomorrow OpenAI somehow through some legal means or whatever is able to say, hey, we achieved AGI, because apparently there's some sort of clause in there. It's once AGI is achieved, although it's not defined in any way, shape, or form, the contract is broken. Something like that. There's, I don't know, I've read that. I'm not a lawyer. But.
I think it's right. But just to make it simpler, it's they find a way out. They break the contract somehow. There's lots of lawyers reading this, I'm sure. Go on.
Right. So Microsoft's number 1 thing has to be, I have to forever have access to OpenAI's models.
Yep.
Right. As crazy as Sam is or whatever, whatever it is, I have to have access to that forever, even if other people don't have it, because quite honestly, I think they're in the same position as Amazon. They don't really have their own great model that they own. Right. So I think that's number 1. And number 2, if they can negotiate that and feel really confident with it, then I think going after Cursor becomes, kind of a pretty simple thing. And then I think the other part of it is you go, why would I pay you $10 billion? I know I'm worth all this money, but why would I pay you $10 billion? Even though you're only worth 12 people, the market is $2.5 billion. I'll pay you 5 or whatever. Because I think the problem of it is somebody else could buy you. I guess that's the fear of it, is somebody else is going to buy you. But you're okay, let's kind of go through the list. OpenAI, I guess, could buy them, right? They've.
I don't think so. It sounds like they're.
The loop comes back to being well, then I have to give it to Microsoft.
Yeah, so I don't think that's going to happen. I think OpenAI is out on this until further notice. They're out.
Google's probably not going to buy them.
They just bought Windsurf. They just acqui-hired the Windsurf team, so they have their solution. Yeah, so they're out. I agree.
Anthropic's not going to buy them. Too expensive. Can't afford it, right? And
could potentially be a strategic partnership there. Though they could all instead of hiring each other's employees, they could all go to dinner and be like, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. Why don't we all get together? Could happen, right?
Right. But that would be like McDonald's and Chick-fil-A having a strategic partnership and being like, we have a restaurant that has hamburgers and chicken, and you're like, well, but which one would you prefer we eat? And you're like, I had some people to eat, and you're like, that's not how we work.
True. So I think, and also too, I think the Claude, the whole Anthropic, they seem to have much bigger, they seem to be AGI or bust. Like the coding thing seems like a sideline to them. So I don't know. I mean, they don't seem like strategically thinking about this stuff like we do.
Right. Apple's probably not going to buy them because, quite honestly, I don't know. I mean, they're kind of tied to developers, but I feel like they're tied more to being like, are you a developer on one of my pieces of hardware? And I don't think, Cursor's like, I can do it on anything with any language with whatever. So it would be sort of a weird thing. And then, maybe Meta comes along, which you're like, but who's Meta kind of going after?
I think I think Meta's, I think Microsoft's the most likely. I think Meta's number 2, only because you have somebody at the top that it's just one person you have to convince. He has the entire checkbook. He's spending like a drunken sailor. I was about to say that. Maybe that's not a good metaphor, but he's not afraid to spend it. No. And if he felt like, hey, just owning the development experience is part of just like trying to own AI. And again, it's the same it's really the same message to them. It's like, maybe it doesn't. And I think Zuckerberg is the one that has actually shown the ability. If you go back to Instagram, people thought he was crazy, turned out great. WhatsApp, much more mixed. I don't know, was that really turned out to be but I think he's looked at I think he doesn't even worry about that. He was like, insurance. So take Cursor and just be like, this is an insurance policy that these people could be huge.
I think the flip side of it is, I think the people he's been buying, his all-star team he's been putting together, are all researchers. They're all big model builders, and he's trying to fix his Llama problem because Llama is not, again, considered the same as, say, GPT-5 or whatever. I think he looks at AI as being, I don't know. I don't feel like now that they no longer do the metaverse and stuff, like that applications are that critical to them selling ads on Instagram, selling ads on WhatsApp, selling ads on Facebook. I think their whole thing is around personalization and selling ads. And I feel like at that point, Cursor is sort of a distraction from.
Yeah, it doesn't fit their natural business cycle, right? Yeah.
Because if he's like, look, if I'm going to spend $5 or $10 billion, I'm just going to keep trying to pick off the model builders and the researchers and those sort of folks, the people that do CLI, UI. Quite honestly, I think you could look at the market and go, I think the market is still fragmented. They haven't figured out what it is. And yes, I could own one of them, but I don't know that that's the winner. I don't know that the CLI route isn't the winner. The IDE route might be the winner. Maybe there's something else that's going to come along a year from now that is, the no code version of drop and drag. And that's really going to be the winner for, something that has to do
with I hear you out. But okay, anyways, in my pitch though, I want to say this though. In my pitch, before you close it out, before you shut it down, before you say no, I just want to be like, hey, one last thing, CEO of Microsoft, I'm going to be like, let me flip through some slides here. Okay. Remember mobile? Remember when we were going to do our own mobile thing? And remember how we were that worried about it? Okay. Hey, you remember the internet? You remember internet search? Yeah. You remember that? You remember how we were going to do that thing and we were going to be better and we had all the advantages? Remember that? And it's like, so I think I would just page through a couple of these and be like, just remember this is, I just was listening to the Acquired episode talking about how many times Yahoo thought they were going to buy Google and passed. They're like, it's too expensive. It's too expensive. And it's we all know how that played out. So I just think I just come back to it. I'm like, I know this is a crazy statement. It's not that much money. It's $9 billion. And it's like, if it doesn't work out, you know what they're not going to write? They're not going to write Cursor was worth $200 billion and led the development experience and dislodged GitHub is the world's code repository. So that would be the thing. And I would come in strong with the fear. So go ahead, Doug. Now give me the practical Brian take. I think you're just saying it's too expensive.
I don't think the price is the thing here. I think the variables for Microsoft basically boil down to, do I have access to a model? Because you guys have sort of proven to me that your experience is awesome, except if you don't have access to the model. And if all of a sudden Google starts getting tighter with their model, or Meta gets tighter with their model, or even our relationship with OpenAI sort of breaks and we don't have as much control of the model, that to me, at least as far as I understand it, it seems sort of important to your experience, so I would sort of be like, hang on, we're going to have the meeting, but I got to have 6 more SAM meetings first and deal with that. and then I got to kind of ask myself, I would ask my team, I would go, okay, let's say we're going to consider $5 billion or $10 billion for these folks, and they don't really have total control over their model. if I gave $5 to $10 billion to the Anthropic team, who already is in the same ballpark from a coding perspective as the Cursor folks, and you sort of attest to that, right? Like it does some pretty cool stuff. Like wouldn't that hedge me? Wouldn't that get me two birds with one stone? I would get the Anthropic model. I'd get the Anthropic researchers. I'd already get this focus on this thing. And if Sam decides to go off and do Sam things that we don't love, I get 2 for 1. And I feel like, and honestly, like if somebody said like, well, sir, that's going to be like 12 billion or 15 billion. And you're like, well, but this one's going to be 9 or 10 billion. I think I might be like, I get 2 or 3 things for 15 billion. And I get this like maybe one and like half thing that, doesn't feel as sort of sold today as it did, even 3 months ago. And so that would be my like, let's talk about that kind of thing. But
well, maybe to your point, and maybe this is the way, it should go on the Microsoft side. The bear case is like, you were kind of getting this before. It's like, maybe you just fly down on tomorrow morning, get the biz dev guys, get down, show up, be like, we're going to buy you for $3 billion. Okay. This is a one-time offer. When I leave this room, this offer is over. And I just want you to know, like, we think you're good, but we also know that you're just a front end to these models. And frankly, we don't even think this paradigm may make it. Claude Code, you know what? Have you downloaded it? It's pretty awesome. In fact, you know what? 2 of your best employees, they're over there now, right? Or no, 2 of your best employees, you just hired them to build it. Gemini, pretty good. They have a great CLI thing. I don't see you have any of that. We'll take you for $3 billion right now. Liquid cash. I'm going to give you the money today, right? Or we can fly back to Seattle and we'll see how it plays out. Maybe you are the next mobile applications, but you know what? Just so you know, like you like to say, we're going to give you your Docker moment. This is your moment. This is the moment you could be rich and have the money in the bank, right? Versus like me leaving here and you having, if you will, just hope and opportunity ahead of you. So that would be a very difficult, I think, conversation. I would lose a lot of sleep if I was faced with like, do I take the money or do I just push on with my mission, if you will?
Yeah, no, I think that's the perfect place to end this. We'll leave it as an open-ended question. We'll see what the Microsoft folks do. Yeah, no, I think it's going to be fascinating. It feels like we now have sort of 2 very active what's going to happen things, the developer assistant thing, and then there's the the ongoing all-star game that's happening for researchers and stuff. Fascinating to watch them both. But so good stuff, man. I kind of enjoy this format of taking one topic, digging into it, figuring out the strategy, figuring out the what ifs, the why did you do this decision, and quite honestly, like Cursor is like, what is it, a dozen or 2 dozen kids that are just like literally right out of college. I don't expect them to have, unless they're, even if they're listening to the Acquired podcast and learning all sorts of history about stuff, like that stuff's not going to kick in until you've sort of lived through some of those things. So anyways, good stuff, man. Thanks for spending some time with me digging into it. I doubt this will be the last time we get to do one of these sort of breaking news things, but this space is fascinating. So thanks for listening, folks. We're going to wrap it up and we will talk to you next week.
Thank you for listening to The Cloudcast. Please visit thecloudcast.net to find more shows, show notes, videos, and everything social media.